Section 9009, the Secretary shall submit to committees a report on the proposed use of all funds appropriated by this or any prior act under the headings Afghanistan Security Forces Fund, Afghanistan Infrastructure Fund, and Pakistan Counterinsurgency Fund.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent that the remainder of the bill through page 161, line 4, be considered as read, printed in the record, and open to amendment at any point.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered. Are there any amendments to that portion of the bill?
Mr. Chairman.
If not, the clerk will read. The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I am going to use, I have 3 amendments. Ledge Council draft number 040 as my first amendment.
The clerk will first read the next paragraph of the bill.
Title 10, Additional General Provisions, Spending Reduction Account, Section 10001, made by the committee under Section 302B of the Congressional Budget Act of 1974 exceeds the amount of proposed new budget authority is $0.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Minnesota seek recognition?
I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Which one? I have 3. Which one does she 40?
Okay.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Ms. McCollum of Minnesota. At the end of the bill, before the short title, insert the following section. The total amount of appropriations made available by this act is hereby reduced by $124,800,000.
The gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment is simple. It cuts $124.8 million from the overall bill. For my colleagues to say they're committed to deficit reduction, this is your chance to prove it. This amendment reduces government spending while protecting the Pentagon's national security mission by reducing the funding for military bands to the authorized level. Currently, this bill and the Pentagon's budget includes a total of $324.8 million for 154 military bands and more than 5,000 full-time professional military musicians. This amendment would reduce the total funding for military bands to $200 million. The limit set for spending on military bands included a voice vote in the 2012 Defense Authorization Bill, H.R. 1540. Let me be clear. This amendment brings the Defense Appropriations Bill in line with the spending on military bands established in the Defense Authorization Bill. Again, the House is already on record voting to limit spending on military bands to $200 million. Earlier, in debate on this bill, Representative Carter of Texas had an amendment that struck the language that I had inserted in the Defense Appropriations Bill that would limit the military bands to $200 million. This amendment was agreed to on voice vote. But I do not believe that the majority of Republicans and Democrats in this House want to be on record adding over $124 million in spending for military bands. This amendment gives all my colleagues the opportunity to reduce the cost of government by cutting $124 million from this bill while allowing the Pentagon to continue to spend $200 million for choirs, jazz bands, ensembles, and other musical missions. There is no doubt that bands are important. We all enjoy listening to military bands and cherish the traditions of military music. But at a time of fiscal crisis, $200 million must be enough for ceremonial music, concerts, choir performance, and country music jam sessions. Maybe you believe that spending $325 million in 2012 is in our national security interest, a national priority that cannot even be cut or reduced. Well, I couldn't disagree more. There are really members in this House who in good conscience vote to cut nutrition for programs for poor, hungry women and infants, but vote to protect military bands' budgets? Is this House really capable of gutting investments in women's health care, but allow $5 million increases in funding for military bands? Republicans are forcing cuts in law enforcement, firefighters, homeless veterans, and they take a stand on opposing limit for funding military bands at $200 million is a national security priority. Is this Congress really going to raise the debt ceiling so it can pay $325 million for military bands next year with money borrowed from China? These are truly misplaced priorities. Mr. Chairman, this Congress faces record deficits, and it's time for both smart investments and tough choices. In this $650 billion defense appropriations bill, this amendment proposes an extremely modest test of this House's willingness to cut spending for non-essential military functions. Last year, the Army Material Commander had a $4.4 million state-of-the-art building specially constructed for Army Material Command Band. While schools, health care centers, and food banks are getting cut, $4.4 million is an example that seems to indicate to me that no one told the Pentagon that this is a fiscal crisis. The Pentagon does not need any more Band-Aid. Mr. Carter argued against reducing spending on military bands, saying the language didn't save 1 cent, and he was correct. This amendment saves U.S. taxpayers $124.8 million. It makes a lot of sense to the Minnesotans I represent, and it should make a lot of sense to my Tea Party Republican colleagues who march to their own drummers. This amendment gives all my colleagues, Republicans and Democrats, a chance to show our constituents a deficit reduction. I urge my colleagues to support this reduction in unnecessary defense spending. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise?
To strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, the gentlewoman's amendment would essentially cap funding for military bands at $200 million and reverse the decision of the body earlier this evening. The band's main mission is music, with a secondary wartime mission for security. Band members train for security, and given the shortage of guards, security is often the band members' go-to-war mission. Every soldier is taught their basic combat skills and can secure the perimeter. The Department of Defense strongly believes that military bands are vital to recruiting, retaining, and community relations, and that they provide patriotic and inspirational music to instill in soldiers, sailors, and airmen, and instill in them the will to fight and win, and foster the support of our citizens and promote national interests. Mr. Chairman, I oppose the bill and urge others to do it, and yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Minnesota. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Mr. Chairman, I ask for a recorded vote, please.
Recorded vote has been requested pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Minnesota will be postponed.
Holt wanted to go next, but now he's talking. I'll do the NASCAR one next.
Does the gentlewoman from Minnesota seek recognition?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Just to be clear with the parliamentary desk, I have 2 amendments left, and this one would deal with the subject of NASCAR.
The clerk will report the amendment.
We've got copies.
Yeah, I don't know.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment offered by Ms. McCullough of Minnesota. At the end of the bill, before the short title, add the following new section. Not more than $20 million of the funds made available by this act may be used to pay motorsports drivers, racing teams, or racing cars in the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing, NASCAR, the National Hot Rod Association, NHRA, the Indy Racing League, IndyCar Series, or the American Motorcyclist Association, AMA, Superbike Racing, or otherwise conduct recruiting outreach through motorsports under the authority of Section 561B of the Floyd D. Spence National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2001 as enacted into law by Public Law 106-398, 114 Stat 165 4A-129.
Gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, my amendment requires the Department of Defense to limit what they spend on motorsports sponsorships for NASCAR, National Hot Rod Association, Indy Car Series, AMA Superbike Racing to no more than $20 million in fiscal year 2012. With our nation in fiscal crisis, I can't imagine anyone wanting to spend more than $20 million for taxpayer-funded racing teams. As members of Congress, we must make choices with what to do with America's taxpayers' money. Congress needs to set priorities that will reduce the deficit and grow our economy. This year, the Department of Defense will spend at least $63 million in taxpayers' funds to sponsor motorsport for so-called recruitment purposes. In the last decade, hundreds of millions of taxpayers' dollars have been spent to sponsor motorsport racing. And what do the American people get for their investment? Well, those millions of tax dollars buy decals, big stickers on race cars. They pay for multi-million-dollar race contracts for millionaire race car drivers and racing team owners. For example, the National Guard is currently spending $20 million in taxpayers' funds to sponsor one race car driver. $20 million, one race car driver. At a time when our nation is fighting two wars and facing a fiscal crisis, why are we borrowing money from China, Russia, Saudi Arabia to pay for sponsorships of millionaire car drivers? How does that advance national security? Now, many of my colleagues insist that these sponsorships are critical to the survival of an all-volunteer military. I disagree, but I respect their passion despite the fact there is no evidence to demonstrate that motorsport program is effective in recruiting. And that's why my amendment maintains a significant investment in motorsport sponsorships, $20 million, to allow the Pentagon to demonstrate to us and to the taxpayers it does work. Now, as members of Congress, we must do a better job of exercising our oversight over the Pentagon's recruiting budget. Right now, 75% of Americans ages 17 to 24 years of old are not qualified. Let me repeat. 75% of young Americans ages 17 to 24 years old are not qualified to serve in the armed forces. Motorsport sponsorships are not the answer to making America's youth more physically fit or more academically prepared to serve. And according to a 2010 report by retired military leaders entitled Too Fat to Fight, the U.S. military faces serious long-term recruiting challenges. Let me quote the report directly. When weight problems are combined with educational deficits, criminal records, and other disqualifiers such as asthma or drug abuse, 75% of Americans 17 to 24 years old are unable to join the military for more than one of those reasons. The military will have to have more fit young men and women if they are going to find enough recruits with the excellent qualifications needed for a modern military. But we're not talking about $63 million to sponsor academic decathlons, soccer leagues, or baseball teams. While these alarming trends facing America's young people, the Pentagon needs to be leading a national effort to ensure young people around this country, from coast to coast, are educationally prepared, physically fit, morally sound, and dedicated to serving our country. Those young men and women aren't just found at racetracks. Some of them, yet that is where our branches of military are spending disproportionate amounts of money for recruiting budgets on an increasingly small number of recruiting targets. Here's an example of a motorsport recruiting power. In 2010, the National Guard spent $645,000 to sponsor one single NASCAR race, the Air Guide 400. According to the Air National Guard, that $650,000 sponsorship generated 439 recruits. Only 6 of those leads were qualified leads or recruited eligibles. How many enlistments for $650,000? 0. 0 enlistments, 0 contracts signed. Other branches of the armed force have found these sponsorships to be a waste. The Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and Navy have all canceled their motorsports sponsorships years ago, shifting their valuable recruitment dollars to more effective programs. I respect the patriotism and passion of motorsports fans. I do. And I encourage the U.S. military to continue its long-standing relationship with the motorsports like NASCAR. This amendment does nothing to the additional $8 million the Army spends on outreach to NASCAR racing events or the millions spent on military recruitment at races. But we are wasting taxpayers' dollars on race cars and millionaire drivers with little or nothing to show from it. I've heard from supporters of race car talk about passion points and media impressions. These sponsorship dollars produce along with television viewers. Really? Americans don't know that there's an Army or an Air Force, or American people don't know that we're at war in Iraq and Afghanistan? They don't need a racing car to tell them that we have a volunteer military and our country's at war. Already this year, the Republican Congress has voted to cut nutrition programs for the poor, hungry, and for infants. And this majority is cutting investments in energy efficiency and high gas prices. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment and to limit the motorship sponsor racing to $20 million. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The gentlelady yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to this amendment.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
And I compliment the gentlelady for her determination. I mean, she has really worked this amendment hard on more than one occasion. The House has already spoken on this issue when we considered earlier H.R. 1. This amendment was defeated by more than 100 votes, 148 to 281. But this is a recruiting tool. I don't think any of us want to go back to a draft. I think we like the fact that we have an all-volunteer service. But if you have an all-volunteer service, it means you've got to recruit. And you use more than just NASCAR or sporting events or advertising in newspapers to gain recruits so that we can have an all-volunteer military as opposed to a conscripted, drafted military. The Army National Guard estimated that it engaged more than 83,000 prospects in the year 2010. The Air Force reports that their NASCAR sponsorship is the second highest source of accessions of all event sports sponsorships. The Army expects that they will this year engage 28,700 prospects and gain access to 182 schools through its sponsorship of NASCAR. Now, the gentlelady, as I said, is persistent. She uses the occasion to mention the fact that the Marine Corps does not use NASCAR for recruiting, which is true. But that's not a reason for why we should discontinue the program. The Navy and the Marine Corps do not sponsor motorsports, NASCAR, but they both use the sponsorship of sporting events as part of their recruiting programs. The Navy is a sponsor of the X Games, while the Marine Corps sponsors a variety of events, including the Ultimate Fighting Championship. The fact of the matter is, we spend a lot of money for recruiting. And the recruiting that are programs that are successful ought to be continued and should not be denied because of whatever the reason that someone objects to using the money for sponsoring race car vehicles. The National Car took 7th place, by the way, in Daytona this past weekend. And not only do we get the sponsorship, the excitement of the crowds, and many of whom go to the recruiting stations, but we get newspaper coverage for free. We get television coverage for free, coverage that we don't have to pay for. because of these events that we do sponsor. So as we did in the Appropriations Committee, and as we did on H.R. 1 earlier this year, I just hope that we will once again defeat this amendment, and I rise in opposition to the amendment. And I yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Minnesota. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
I would like a recorded vote, please.
Recorded vote has been requested pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Minnesota will be postponed. Does the gentlelady from Minnesota seek recognition?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have my last and final amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report.
Amendment offered by Ms. McCollum of Minnesota. At the end of the bill, before the short title, insert the following section. None of the funds made available by this act may be provided.
We could dispense with the
Is there
dispense with the
objection?
reading.
Without objection, so ordered. The gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Section 9012 of this Defense Appropriation Bill contains language authorizing the Pentagon, under the direction and control of the Secretary of Defense, to operate Task Force for Business and Stability Operations in Afghanistan. The bill provides $150 million to the Secretary of Defense to operate this business task force. Our brave military men and women have been in Afghanistan for 10 long years, confronting the Taliban, killing terrorists, and helping secure a better future for the Afghan people. When in the course of this long war, did it become the Department of Defense's role to facilitate business opportunities for Afghan and foreign countries? Is it really within the Pentagon's expertise or mission to excel at business development, farming, or mineral exploration? This bill gives the Department of Defense authorization to carry out, quote, projects that include private investment, industrial development, banking and financial systems development, agricultural diversification and revitalization, energy development with respect to Afghanistan. Afghanistan is an active war zone. The American service members are under attack, and our Department of Defense should only be solely focused on their security. The Pentagon's focus should not be on starting up businesses or facilitating business development tours for corporate CEOs. Economic development is an important part of America's overall strategy in Afghanistan, but that is the role of civilian agencies like USAID, the Department of State, or the Department of Congress. Congress needs to invest in America's civilian capacity to carry out this function. Unfortunately, the Republican leadership in this House does not believe in international development activities or a component of our national security. If they did, they would not cut vital foreign assistance capacity and programs. Every House member needs to ask why the Pentagon is supporting the development of an Afghan carpet industry while U.S. soldiers are under attack. Afghan carpets should not be a strategic priority for the Department of Defense. Every House member needs to ask the Department of Defense is helping Kate Spade, an exclusive New York handbag designer, to source raw materials in Afghanistan. Since when did the Pentagon's investment in taxpayers' dollars go to promoting women's fashion? The Deputy Undersecretary of Defense described his role in heading up the task force in the Washington Post, and I quote him, "We do capitalism. We're about helping companies make money." Colleagues, helping companies make money is not the role of the Department of Defense. This is the worst example of mission creep. It is up to Congress to perform its oversight duty and rein in the Pentagon. Getting people to work in Afghanistan is important. Afghans who are working on farms and in factories and in functioning government ministries and the police and the military are likely not shooting at our troops. But this report that accompanies the Defense Authorization Bill that passed in May said it best. And I quote from the Defense Authorization Bill, quote, "The function of the private sector business development falls outside the core competency of the Department of Defense." The House Armed Services Committee went on to further state, quote, "The mission should eventually fall under the jurisdiction of a different agency, like USAID or possibly the Department of Commerce. The Task Force for Business and Stability Operations in Afghanistan and its $115 million budget should not be funded and not authorized in the Defense Appropriations Bill. This function and this money belongs in the State and Foreign Operations Appropriation Bill. This task force is another example of the militarization of foreign assistance that diverts the Pentagon from its core mission of security and warfighting. It also dangerously blurs the line between military-affiliated personnel in a war zone and civilian personnel carrying out development activities. America needs the Department of Defense to take care of its top priority, ensuring the national security of our country. We all know that there will be fewer and fewer military personnel in Afghanistan in fewer months. Troops stationed in Afghanistan will be in increasing danger. We must allow those troops to focus on their security mission. If the Secretary of Defense truly believes business development and the work of the task force is vital to national security, then the Pentagon can contract with professionals at USAID to carry out this function. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment and get the business development and cooperative investment support out of the Pentagon. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to this amendment.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, some years ago, the Americans and our allies pretty much stabilized Afghanistan and neutralized the Taliban. But then before the job was completed, we all walked away. The Taliban resurged, came back, and created the situation that we faced today and yesteryear and last year and the year before. Let's don't let that happen again. Now, this task force for business and stability is part of that operation to try to maintain stability once we clear out and neutralize the Taliban once again. The mission of the task force is to assist the commander of U.S. Central Command in developing a link between U.S. military operation in Afghanistan and economic elements of U.S. national power in order to reduce violence, enhance stability, to restore economic normalcy in Afghanistan through business and economic opportunities such as agricultural diversification and energy development. The Secretary may use up to $150 million of available operations for overseas contingency operations. This amendment would prohibit that. This amendment would not permit us to do the things that we need to do after winning on the battlefield, after eliminating the combat areas. We have got to maintain an Afghanistan that is not any longer under the jurisdiction and the influence of the Taliban. As I said, we did that once before at great cost. We neutralized the Taliban. We basically stabilized Afghanistan, and then we walked away. We didn't do the things that this Business and Stability Operations Task Force would do. So let's do them this time so that we don't have to go back and refight the war against the Taliban in Afghanistan. Not a good amendment. It is not a good amendment. And I rise in opposition to the amendment, and I yield back my time.
The gentleman.
Oh, yes, I yield.
I agree with the gentleman on this particular amendment. I think we should vote it down. Thank you.
The gentleman yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Minnesota. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. Does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
I do. I have an amendment at the desk. I believe it is number 43.
The clerk will designate.
Amendment number 43, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Holt of New Jersey.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, over 19,000 people in New Jersey depend on the goods and services provided by the commissary at Fort Monmouth. The looming closure of Fort Monmouth has cast a cloud over the future of this facility, causing considerable consternation among the active duty, Guard and Reserve, and military retirees who count on the commissary to help them save money and live their quality lives that we've promised them. In February 2011, the Secretary of the Army recognized the importance of this facility and recommended to the Pentagon leadership that the facility remain open. Department regulations give the Pentagon the ability to decide whether to keep the commissary open after a base closes. I should point out that the active personnel at Naval Weapons Station Earl, which does not have a commissary, depend on this commissary as well. And we in New Jersey, in the New Jersey delegation, strongly agree with Secretary McHugh's recommendation, which is currently under consideration in the Pentagon. The amendment I am offering, but will withdraw pursuant to a discussion, a colloquy with my colleagues, would bar the use of fiscal 12 funds to close the commissary. And at this time, I would like to yield to Mr. Dix, the ranking member.
I can completely understand the gentleman's concern here, and I have a copy of the letter from Secretary McHugh, which I think we should put in the record. Can we do it at this level, or do we have to be in the House to do it? To put the letter in the record?
In the House.
In the House. We'll do it at the appropriate time in the House. But I want you, the gentleman, to know that I'm prepared to work with him on this and see if we can talk to the powers to be over at the Pentagon, and hopefully they can accept Secretary McHugh's recommendation. And I'll yield to the...
well, I would be pleased also to yield to the gentleman from Florida.
Thank you for yielding. Just let me say that I agree with Mr. Dix. We are more than happy to work with you to work out this problem, and thank you for yielding.
I thank both gentlemen. This means a great deal to the people of New Jersey whose lives are, well, to whom we owe a great deal for their military work. With that understanding, Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to withdraw my amendment.
Without objection, the amendment is withdrawn.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
That's great. The gentleman from Florida.
Mr. Chairman, at 5 minutes till 11 p.m., I move that the committee do now rise.
The question is on the motion the committee rise. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The committee rises.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union, having had under consideration H.R. 2219, directs me to report that it has come to no resolution thereon.
The Chair and the Committee of the Whole reports that the committee has had under consideration H.R. 2219 and has come to no resolution. For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado seek recognition?
The House stand in adjournment.
The question is on the motion to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the House stands adjourned. 10 a.m. tomorrow morning for morning hour debate.
So the House has gavelled out, but earlier today, members continued work on 2012 Defense Department spending.